How about a little Labor Day weekend bonus edition of the pod where we talk about the Bills' new punter, the practice squad, Brandon Beane's recent comments, an incredible Josh Allen interview, and draft prospects to watch. It's all coming your way today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Happy Labor Day weekend to you, and thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day. And as a reminder to you, we are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Well, folks, I just had more to say this week. We typically do an episode Monday through Friday, but there's been a lot that's happened this week, and I wanted to get the Greg Thompson interview in as well, but the Bills signed a new punter, and they announced a practice squad, and Brandon Beane met with the media, and then I stumbled into this amazing Josh Allen interview that I have to talk about, and it's the opening weekend in college football, and I need to give you the Bills draft prospects to watch. And so I had a full show worth of stuff to get into, and so that's exactly what we're going to do for a sixth episode this week. I'm excited. We got a lot of good stuff to talk about. Let's start with the Bills' new punter, Sam Martin. So the Bills signed Sam Martin. We're going to talk all about him, but as I speculated, the corresponding move to get Sam Martin on the roster was placing wide receiver Marquez Stevenson on the injured reserve list to make room for him on the 53. And so Stevenson will be out for at least 4 weeks, probably longer. And the Bills were able to fill the hole that they had at punter. And let's face it, the Bills haven't had a quality punter since 2011, which was Brian Moorman's last good season. He struggled in 2012 and was released. He went to Dallas. Then he came back in 2013, and I thought he struggled again. I mean, it's been like a good 10, 11 years since the Bills have had a legitimate, good NFL punter. And now they have one in Sam Martin. So who is Sam Martin? Well, he's 32 years old, a fifth-round pick in the 2013 NFL Draft out of Appalachian State University by the Detroit Lions. He was the Lions punter from 2013 through 2019, and then he spent the last 2 seasons with the Denver Broncos. 614 career punts, a career average of 45.9 yards per punt, a net average of 41.3. Those are good numbers. Only allowing 7.5 yards per return on his punts for his career. Average hang time of 4.37 seconds, which is really solid. He's only had 1 punt blocked for his career. He's been a steady holder. Look at the kickers that he's worked with. Brandon McManus has been terrific with Denver over the last couple of seasons with Sam Martin holding. Matt Prater was his kicker in Detroit. He was outstanding there. And so you have a nice, long history of holding and punting, and the Bills got it figured out, right? I know it was quite the path to get here, but the Bills have a legitimate NFL punter. Statistically, Sam Martin had the best season ever for a Denver Broncos punter in 2021. And I know that some people's initial question for this signing and the statistical success that Sam Martin had last year was, well, look, he's a Denver punter, the Mile High Stadium, the altitude. Okay, cool. But we have a nice sample size of him in Detroit, and he was literally the best punter ever for the Denver Broncos. So why was he available? Well, he refused to take a pay cut. And teams, some teams will only have so much of an appetite in terms of what they're willing to spend for specialists. The Broncos moved on. The Bills signed him. And they checked a big-time box here for the Bills, who had a big hole at punter, as we know. Last season, Sam Martin was 12th in the NFL in punter EPA. which is, middle of the pack, slightly above average in terms of EPA. And if you care about PFF rankings, which everyone does when they reveal something good about your team, Martin was their 4th highest graded punter last season. So box checked. The Bills have a punter. Let's play football. Now, the Bills also have a practice squad. We've talked all about the 53-man roster, but an extension of the roster, especially in this day and age of football, where you can call up players from the practice squad, this is really a nice extension of your roster. And so 13 of the 16 players on the Bills practice squad are guys that were with them throughout the entire offseason. Quarterback Matt Barkley, offensive lineman Greg Manns and Alec Anderson. I was so excited to see Greg Manns back on the practice squad because I think he's a rosterable interior offensive lineman. Both the running backs, Raheem Blackshear and Duke Johnson, they're back. So I know a lot of folks were real nervous about Raheem getting scooped up. Nope, didn't happen. Back on the Bills practice squad. 3 wide receivers, Tavon Austin, Isaiah Hodgins, and Tanner Gentry. I love Austin being back, a veteran like him. You just love having him in your back pocket. The same thing was with Isaiah Hodgins, who we were all so satisfied with this preseason. He's back. And then, of course, Tanner Gentry, who, as long as Josh Allen's a quarterback, I'd assume Tanner Gentry is going to have a job on the Bills practice squad. I think that's a little handshake agreement that Josh Allen has with Brandon Beane, especially now that he gets 16 players on this thing. Defensive end Mike Love, who really quality practice squad player. Same thing with Brandon Bryan at defensive tackle, CJ Brewer at defensive tackle, Joe Giles Harris at linebacker, and defensive back Jamarcus Ingram. Those are the 13 players that have been with the team that they released and are now back on the practice squad. Now, they did add 3 players to the practice squad that haven't been with the Bills before, and a couple of these are very, very intriguing players. And I'll start that with tight end Zach Davidson. Very interesting player to me. Was a 2021 5th-round pick by the Vikings out of Central Missouri, so a small school player. And, 5th-round pick in 2021 for the Vikings, like I mentioned there. And what's interesting about that 2021 draft class for the Vikings is they had 11 picks. They've already cut 6 of those 11 players. And the reason for that is this year they have a new general manager and head coach. And, of course, it was Mike Zimmer at head coach and Rick Spielman at general manager for so long. And as you know, like when new GMs and head coaches take over, they flush the roster. They want their own guys. I mean, they cut 3 third-round picks, a 4th-round pick, and a 5th-round pick of those 6 players. One of them being Zach Davidson, who spent last season on their practice squad. So Zach Davidson's interesting because he's got physical traits for days. 6'7", 245 pounds. He runs a 4.64 40-yard dash, 37.5-inch vertical jump, a 6.95 3-cone. I am intrigued. I mean, there's a lot of size and athleticism here with Zach Davidson. His last season at Central Missouri, 40 catches, 894 yards, 15 touchdowns. It's really good production. He was a first-team all-conference tight end and, drum roll, punter. This guy is a tight end and a punter, which is kind of just a fun fact and just speaks to the athleticism that he has. Actually, he was a first-team All-American for the Central Missouri. I assume that's probably Division II. Maybe it's FCS. I'm not sure. But he was an All-American in that level of competition. So I'm excited about Zach Davidson. I think this is exactly what you want to have on the practice squad. Just really toolsy guys that, have a lot of appeal because of what they can do physically. Now you just see if you can mold them into something meaningful, and maybe that won't happen, but I'm intrigued. The Bills also signed to the practice squad cornerback Kyler McMichael, a pretty solid football player out of North Carolina, was an undrafted free agent this year, spent camp and preseason with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, didn't make the team, signed with the Bills practice squad. I thought he was a decent player at North Carolina. I didn't find him to be a draftable player, but I enjoyed being around him at the Shrine game in Las Vegas last year, and obviously I've spent time with him at North Carolina as well. He's been in my region. Thought he was a reasonable player, and and I think he's a worthwhile stash on the practice squad, especially because the Bills missed out on keeping Nick McLeod, and so that's a nice little addition there. And then also offensive tackle Ryan Van Denmark. The Bills didn't retain Luke Tenuta, who signed with the Colts, to their active roster, and they were able to get Ryan Van Denmark to their practice squad. Van Denmark, a 43-game starter at UConn, 6'7", 307 pounds, 35 3/4-inch arms. He's got a lot of length, and he's actually a really good athlete as well. And so, the Bills love these tall, long offensive tackles, kind of like a Spencer Brown, kind of like a Tommy Doyle, kind of just fits right in line with their prototype that we've learned at offensive tackle. Van Denmark is a player that's in my region for the Draft Network, and so I did a full scouting report on him. And I'll just read to you really quick my summary. I said Ryan Van Denmark earned playing time as a freshman at right tackle in 2017 and then continued to start for 3 seasons at left tackle for UConn. The best part of Van Denmark's game is his length and how he competes to use angles and body positioning to execute his assignments. When it comes to concerns, Van Denmark lacks functional strength, bend, timing, and versatility. If he can get notably stronger and learn to play with better bend, it would go a long way in his chances of sticking in the NFL. His body type will garner some attention, but he needs considerable development after producing uneven tape at UConn and struggling against top competition. So look, I mean, yeah, there's a reason he didn't make a roster. There's a reason the Bills were able to get him on their practice squad. But I think when you go back to what I said about Zach Davidson, like there's just tools that are present here. And I think he's an intriguing player to stash. A guy that has played the right and the left side, has length, has athleticism, has some experience, and now it's just about getting stronger and learning some technique. And you feel good about the Bills, both from a training staff perspective to help him get stronger, but also from a technique perspective and how Aaron Kromer could be able to help him out. So I'm pretty excited here about these 3 additional practice squad additions that the Bills were able to find, and of course the 13 players that they were able to retain. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports information this season. Find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this weekend's opening games. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting, esports, and scores. It is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. It's BetOnline, and it's where the game starts. All right. Next up, I want to talk about Brandon Beane's press conference that he had on Thursday morning, actually. Kind of after teams set their 53-man roster, typically the general manager will be made available to the media. And, of course, that was the case with Brandon Beane. And he said some interesting things that I want to mention here on the podcast. We'll start with Tre'Davious White and, of course, the decision to put him on the PUP list and, I guess, expectations for him. Brandon Beane said this. He said, Trey White will play a considerable amount of games this season. And we talked about that yesterday with Greg Thompson. I mean, he's probably going to play 10 or 11 regular season games plus the playoffs. And so you're going to get a good amount of contribution for Trey White. And then I've said this before, but like just think about that as a midseason addition to your football team. Trey White, an all-pro corner. I get pretty excited about that. Now, Brandon Beane wouldn't give a specific timeline for Tre'Davious White, but he said that should be known soon enough, although it will remain in-house for competitive reasons. You know the Bills are never going to tell you anything they don't have to tell you when it comes to the status of a player. Brandon Beane did comment that he has an upcoming doctor's appointment, which will give them more clarity. And, of course, they want to make sure he is physically and mentally ready to play. And mention that the ramp-up opportunities won't be there for him like other players in terms of camp and preseason. And so they have to try to manufacture that the best they can. But obviously they want to fight hard against re-injury and setbacks. And Brandon Beane actually referenced Thomas Davis in Carolina, who, if I'm not mistaken, had 3 ACL tears in 23 months. Like, you just don't want that. And so they're going to take their time here, which is smart. There's a long-term interest here. You want Trey White to be your number one corner for like the next 5 years. And so if you have to wait a couple extra games to make sure he's ready to go, then you do that. That's the smart, right thing to do for the team. It's a smart, right thing to do for the player. And so while we're all sitting here anxious and excited to see Trey White play football again for the Buffalo Bills, you got to make sure it's the right time. And I continue to believe that it's Week 8 against the Green Bay Packers. Talked about O.J. Howard in that release, and specifically the way he was prompted to talk about O.J. Howard was with the understanding of the amount of dead cap that the Bills would need to eat or have to eat because they moved on from him. And Brandon Beane said, in this seat, you have to do your best to pick the best 53. It's not always easy. And then he said that he wouldn't hesitate to bring him back if the opportunity presented itself. And so the Bills could potentially get a cap credit for O.J. Howard, but he needs to stay on the Houston Texans roster. He was signed by the Texans, and he has to stay on the roster for the entire season for the Bills to get that cap credit. So in the back of your mind this year, root for O.J. Howard to stay rostered by the Houston Texans. And the Texans don't have a very good football team, and so you'd like to think he's got a good chance of sticking around over there. Regarding Sam Martin, the addition at punter, Brandon Beane said that they had a couple of veterans that they considered. They thought about some young guys with strong legs, but then he said, look, it's not 2018. We didn't want to take a young guy and mold them. They wanted a veteran as a punter and a holder, especially considering how close it is to the start of the season. So that really changes things. You didn't have time at this point to take a chance on upside. You needed a very consistent player, and they got that in Sam Martin. He mentioned that Von Miller spoke highly of Sam. Chad Hall knows him. There was good reviews on him, and they just felt comfortable about him being able to come in and get that timing down with Reed Ferguson and Tyler Bass to get that field goal operation handled. And, of course, you feel good about what you added in terms of a punter. Brandon Beane was asked about Von Miller recruiting Odell Beckham Jr. I really respected the way that Brandon Beane answered this. He said, I'm aware of it. Anything Von Miller says, I am going to respect. Von wants to win. Guys that have been around knows what it takes, and he knows what it looks like. I'm going to give him the time of day. I respect what he thinks. Von sent me a text on Sam Martin. Von wants to win, and I want to surround myself with as many of those people as I can. And so, look, the Bills are pretty tight when it comes to cap space. Brandon Beane mentioned that they have between $2.4 and $2.8 million. And so that's doesn't seem to be enough to sign an Odell Beckham Jr. But also, Brandon Beane wasn't dismissive, right? He didn't sit there and say, it's just old teammates or whatever. He said, look, I'm aware of it. I'm going to listen to Von Miller. He's a winner. He's been around winners. He knows what it takes to win in this league. I'm going to give him the time of day. And I love that about Brandon Beane. You have too many general managers that just don't have those people skills, right? They know how to scout and they know how to make a roster in terms of collecting talent, but there's the person side of that matters. And you get every indication that Brandon Beane just gets it from that angle. You got a player like Josh Allen, you got a player like Steph Diggs, you got a player like Von Miller. You listen to those guys, and you can see how those players have been able to influence this roster. Josh Allen got the offensive coordinator that he wanted. Josh Allen made sure Steph Diggs didn't go anywhere. Von Miller feels comfortable openly recruiting other players and talking to Brandon Beane about that. You want those things. Other teams don't have it. Tom Brady didn't have that with the Patriots. Aaron Rodgers didn't have that and doesn't have that with the Packers. Josh Allen has that with the Bills. Real quick, no update on Jordan Poyer and his contract status, which Brandon Beane never really comments on negotiations and contracts in the media, so I wasn't surprised to hear that. And then Marquez Stevenson and his injury, Brandon Beane said that he's not close by any means, and he's recovering from foot surgery, so who knows when he will be back in the mix. All right, we got to talk about this Josh Allen interview with Chris Sims. This was incredible. And so let me tell you how to find it. Go to YouTube. It's the NFL on NBC channel, Josh Allen with Chris Sims. It was an absolutely unreal interview. I was like 8 minutes into it. It's like a 33-minute interview. And I had to just hit pause and take a moment because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You know, I consume a lot of football content. I obviously produce a lot of football content, and this was rare stuff. I've never heard Josh Allen open up with such simplicity regarding his mechanics and his approach, talking in detail regarding things he's taken from Aaron Rodgers' game and implemented them. He talked about his transition to becoming a rotational thrower. He talked about release points, sequencing, alignment. And Josh Allen, as you know, is such a unique player. So hearing him talk about those things was incredible for me. I mean, I was literally in heaven listening to this. And of course, there's things that I want to bring up with you today on this podcast. I'm not going to spoil the whole interview. Chris Sims, NBC, they deserve all the credit for getting this interview. So go listen to it and listen to it multiple times. I have. And so I don't want to steal their stuff, but like there's things that I want to get into here. And also, as far as a lot of the mechanical stuff and processing and approach stuff, Josh Allen's going to explain that a whole lot better than I can. So go listen to him do it. And I said do it there because like he does demonstrate a lot of those mechanical things. It's incredible. If you love football, like even if you don't like Josh Allen, which if you're listening to this podcast, you do, but I've told other people that aren't necessarily Bills fans that just love football, like listen to this. You will learn things. So I don't know how to endorse it any higher than that, but listen to the interview. I think you'll love it. I've done it twice and I'll probably listen to it again. So some things that I do want to mention here. First of all, him talking about the style of offense that the Bills run was really interesting. And this is kind of a quote from Josh Allen. He said, in our offense specifically, we have so many options. Route depths can vary. They can break in, they can break out. Most systems are more rigid where you have to get to a specific point and it requires robotic footwork by the quarterback and it's reliant on very precise timing and everything being on schedule. Josh said, I'm willing to sit on my back foot and tell my receivers, do your job, get open, and when you get open, I'll pull the trigger. And he talked about how he likes to set up initially to throw left and then adjust to throw right because as he's become a more rotational thrower, that's a lot easier for him. And when he got done talking about this, Chris Sims said, I've never heard anybody say that. And I love that. I think, and I'll get into this a little bit more with another topic from this interview that I thought was captivating, but this speaks to how Sean McDermott has allowed his players to just play football. Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to it. There's a lot of scheme. There's a lot of thought. But at the end of the day, get open, catch the football, block, run, make plays, right? And, you know, we've transitioned from an era of passing offenses where everything was West Coast. You had the Joe Montana, Bill Walsh influence, then to Mike Holmgren, that whole just 3-step drops, rhythm throws, 5 steps, hit your back foot, throw the ball. Okay, sure. That's great. And for certain quarterbacks, they need that. For Kirk Cousins, he needs that, right? But when you get talents like a Pat Mahomes and a Justin Herbert and a Josh Allen, you got to be willing to adjust and allow those guys to be dudes. Allow them to not sit there and think about the ankle flexion required in the second step of their drop and the hitch and the amount of time that the hitch takes at the top and that receiver has exactly 11 and a half yards of route depth before they break back in. Play football. If you got Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert type talents. And I love that Sean McDermott has given Josh Allen and his football team that opportunity to do this. In fact, let me jump ahead to that part of my notes. Hopefully I don't get too off course here. But later in the interview, Chris Sims talked to Josh Allen about Sean McDermott as a defensive coach and his willingness to let Josh Allen go all in and be Josh Allen, right? You hear about defensive coaches, and you've seen it. You've been through Dick Duran. You lived through that. You've seen other very conservative, defensive-minded coaches that, just want to run the football, keep things close, hope to make a play late in the game, punt the ball well, make your field goals, like boring football. Sean McDermott's not like that, and he's a defensive-minded coach. And so Chris Sims asked Josh, like, hey, like, how did this happen? And Sean McDermott, or through Josh Allen, he said, Sean McDermott said, season 3, Sean McDermott told the captains, this is your team. Here's the keys. You do you. When you're on the field, I trust you implicitly. Take care of the football, score points. Josh said, that allowed me to play free and loose and be myself and not a robot. McDermott said, we drafted you to be who you are and not change you. And then Josh went on to talk about Case Keenum and Matt Barkley and all the different systems that they've been part of in their pro careers. And then stepping into Buffalo, they think it's awesome. They respect that the coaches show the players or give them the opportunity to go out there and just play free and figure it out and not be so rigid. Josh said it makes you feel like a grown man playing football. And what I really respect about this entire thing is go back to season 3, coming out of season 2 to season 3 for Josh Allen. What happened in season 2? The 10-6 year, and it was the playoff loss to the Houston Texans, right? Bills were up like 16-0, wind up losing in overtime. And Josh Allen, I mean, let's be honest, kind of unraveled there late in the game. And Sean McDermott's response to that was not that we're going to restrict you. We have to play things closer to the vest. We have to run the ball more. We have to protect you. We can't let you be as free out there because it's costing the football team. You know what the Bills did? They said, let's go get a bunch of receivers, right? And let's go spread the ball all over the yard. Let's throw the ball more than anyone else in the league and let you go be you. I mean, talk about a watershed moment for this Bills franchise. It's that. It's responding like they did coming out of that Houston game, and that has led to the ascension to Josh Allen as an MVP candidate and one of the faces of the league. I think that's incredible and something we don't talk enough about. Let's go back to my notes. Let's hope I don't get too off course here. Josh Allen talked about the change in his process. Like when he went from thinking he can make every throw and just trying to do too much on the field to, making a lot of big plays, but also trusting the players around him. He pointed to exactly what I hoped he would point to. He said, second year versus the Patriots, 3 interceptions in the first half, got reamed out by Brian Dable. Then he gets knocked out of the game in the second half. The Bills lose 16-10. But like the reason that they lost is they kept on turning over the ball. Matt Barkley had like 3 chances late in the game to win it, couldn't do it. If Josh Allen finishes that game, I think there's a chance they win it. But they wind up losing 16-10 after a 3-0 start. And you realize that Josh had to change his approach. And he has, right? He has. And that's another watershed moment in this team being where they are. It's Josh learning those lessons and then coming out of that, right? Then I think they play Tennessee the next week. And then you just saw him kind of evolve as a player really from there. I thought it was fun when he talked about the first touchdown pass in the Patriots playoff game was the first of 5 7 touchdown drives. And we've all heard Josh Allen talk about this, and like he didn't mean to throw that touchdown pass. He thought he was throwing it out of the back of the end zone. Dawson Knox caught the ball. But what's fun was listening to Josh talk about that play and say, look, because remember, he held onto the ball for like 11 seconds, something unprecedented like that. And, he rolls right, and he saw Judon in his peripheral coming in on him. And Josh's thought was, let me just hold this ball a little bit longer, see if he can draw a flag and throw it out of bounds. And, like, that's cool. He was thinking about that. He wasn't thinking like, let me throw the ball away. Like he's like, let me throw the ball away and draw a flag. Like, let me hold on to this ball a little bit longer and see if Matt Judon can be undisciplined and hit me, and we'll get a free first down. Really smart football player, and just rare to hear people talk about stuff like that. Let's talk about what Josh Allen talked about regarding his workout regimen, because Chris Sims asked him about this. Josh responded very sarcastically about his workout regimen. He said, look, 24/7 every day in the offseason, I'm working out. He was very sarcastic. And he went on to elaborate and said, look, after the season, I'm beat up physically, and that this offseason, it was the least amount of working out that he did. But then he said, I came back and had the best testing that he's ever had, and he attributed that to the rest that he had. And this isn't, my response right here is not necessarily specifically about that. My response here is more about all the responses I've ever heard Josh Allen have about diet and training. And I want to be careful with sounding like I'm being overly critical, because Josh knows what he needs to do to get himself right. And I've said this before, but my long-term concern with Josh Allen is him developing the right plan for taking care of himself from a training perspective and a diet perspective. I don't think he's figured out either. I trust that he will, but when it comes to training and diet, you can tell he discusses those things, or you could tell that when he discusses those things, that even he acknowledges that there is more for him to sort out. And I think we all want to watch Josh Allen play forever, right? Like I'm not ready to live or even think about living in a world where Josh Allen's not the Bills quarterback. And I think for that to happen for as long as possible, another 15 years or whatever, 10 years at least, Josh is going to have to figure this out. He's going to have to find out the right regimen to keep himself pliable, to keep himself strong, to keep himself able to do the things that he does in the field that makes him successful for a very long time. And there's a training component to that. There's a diet component to that. And I think Josh has work to do there. And I think he would admit that. Finding that balance, and I'm sure it's difficult. I don't have the answer, right? I've never been an NFL quarterback. I don't know how to train him. I don't know any of that stuff. But I think this is something that Josh has to figure out. And you hear guys like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers talk about these things, and they're playing elite level football. Aaron Rodgers is like the MVP of the league the last 2 years, pushing 40 years old. Tom Brady's playing at a high level. He's 45. I think he's got to get this stuff figured out so that way we can talk about Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills player, when he's 40 years old. I want that, right? You want that too, I'm sure. I think this is a big thing for Josh Allen to get sorted out. I enjoyed him talking about the differences with Dorsey at OC from Daboll. Josh Allen, when commenting on that, he said it's the run game. They're going to have consistency with our approach to it. There's a different thought process, and the linemen respect the plan with Coach Cromer. You heard me talk about that for the last year, where I've said things like the Bills want to be too multiple with their run scheme, and before you can do everything, you have to do something well. And that you can't just go into it saying, well, we have good numbers, therefore we should be able to run the football. There's got to be a plan. There has to be an approach. There has to be communication. There has to be strategy to use your linemen effectively in the ways that they can run block. You can't have this mixed-matched group of offensive linemen that some of them fit better for a gap power scheme and some of them fit better for a zone scheme. The Bills have not had congruency with their plan from a personnel to a scheme perspective. And in fewer words, Josh Allen said that. And so I felt affirmed in what I've believed. I felt obviously affirmed in the conversations that I've had with the coaches and some of the players about this. And that's what really gets me excited about this Bills run game this year, is that there's just going to have a clear identity, a clear plan, and a clear understanding of how these skill sets work together to run the damn ball. I thought it was funny that he was talking about how Tom Brady called him chunky at the match. Josh Allen said, he won't race me, though, and he won't tackle me, though. It was a fun interview, 33 minutes long. I watched it twice. I'm going to watch it again. It's incredible. Learn things, appreciate Josh Allen more, learn more about quarterback play, learn more about the Bills and their approach and everything that's happened with Josh Allen. Check it out. NFL on NBC on YouTube, Josh Allen and Chris Sims. All right, let's close this thing out by talking about the Buffalo Bills draft prospects to watch on Saturday. This is something that we do once the college football season gets fired up, and it's here. And so this will be a staple of our Friday podcasts moving forward throughout the college football season. And I do this for a number of reasons. I get a lot of herd mentality questions about draft prospects, and that's great. I want to talk about them. But I also understand that everybody has a varying interest in the draft, right? Some people don't want to hear about this until February, right? Or March, or even April. Some people want to hear about it in May, right? So I understand that there's wide-ranging appetites for draft conversation, but I do want to have something for the people that care about it all year. And you know, you love this football team. You want to know who the next potential players can be, and I want to tell you who I think they can be and give you different players to watch on the weekend so you can watch college football with an eye towards the NFL draft, but specifically with an eye towards the Buffalo Bills, and offer you players that I think will fit at positions of needs that I think could be targets. All right. And so that's the purpose of this segment. And if we do 3 players every single week, you know, by the end of the college football season, what is it, 12 weeks, 12 times 3, not a math guy. I don't know what that is, but that's a decent amount of players that I think would be Bills-specific targets that you can be familiar with. And so what I try to do with this is I'm mindful of the day, right? There's noon kicks, there's afternoon kicks, there's late kicks. And so I try to give you a player in each time slot in a big time game that I think people would be interested in watching. So I'm not going to tell you to watch, you know, Central Michigan against Tulane when you could be watching Oregon and Georgia, right? Like, I understand what people want to watch. And so I try to tighten my parameters to deliver that information. So let's do it. 12 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. Turn your TV on to ABC. Michigan is playing Colorado State. That's a pretty light slate of noon kicks. So apologies for making you watch Colorado State, but I think it's a good opportunity to watch Michigan. Michigan has a tight end by the name of Eric All. He's number 61 on my preseason big board. And like I said, I want to give you players at positions that I think could be of potential interest to the Bills in the draft. So I'm going to be talking about tight ends and guards and safeties potentially, maybe some linebackers, you know, positions that I think the Bills will be targeting. And of course, always the defensive line, right? That's always something that they're interested in. So Eric All, tight end, Michigan against Colorado State, 12 p.m. Eastern time, ABC, comes in at number 61 on my preseason big board. Wears number 83, 6'5", 255 pounds is what he's listed at. I like the receiving skill set here. He's really athletic. I love his run after catch ability. I think he's got separation skills as a route runner. I just think it comes down to more opportunity for Eric All. And college teams can be very inconsistent with targeting their tight ends, right? Some teams do a good job of it. Notre Dame does. Georgia has done well with it now that they have Brock Bowers. But for the most part, there's not a lot of production there for tight ends in college in a lot of instances. Hello, Dawson Knox, who didn't catch a touchdown pass his entire career in college. And so Eric All caught 38 passes for 437 yards and 2 touchdowns last season. But I think he's more talented than that. And he had one game, I think it was against Michigan State. He had like 10 catches. You could see, and if you watch that game, you could feel his impact and get a really good understanding for what he can offer in the passing game. And so I think he's going to have a big year. I think he's really dynamic. He's probably my favorite Big Ten tight end. I like him better than Sam Laporta at Iowa at this point. So check him out. I think he can be a really nice option for this Bills offense if they really do want to get the passing game going through the tight ends a little bit more. And, you know, felt like maybe they missed out with the O.J. Howard signing and what he can mean for them. This would be a nice fallback option, especially I think Tommy Sweeney's an expiring contract as well. Keep it on the ABC at 3:30, the big game. I think this is the best game on Saturday, Oregon versus Georgia. Watch Georgia center Cedric Van Pran, number 75 on my preseason big board. He wears number 63. He plays center, and the Bills don't need a center. Obviously, they have Mitch Morse, but I have no doubt that he can play guard in the NFL. 6'4", 310 pounds, started all 15 games last season for Georgia. Obviously, national champions last year. He was a redshirt freshman, so he's just a redshirt sophomore this year, and he's a stud. I mean, I love what he showed in his first season as a starter. Love the movement skills. Lateral quickness is there. He can slide his feet and mirror in pass protection. He can get out in space. He's got a lot of range and good power at the point of attack. I think he kind of just checks all the boxes. Could be a big-time riser this year. Rock solid day 2 target for me that the Bills could look at as a potential starter at left guard. The last one, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Again, ABC. They got the good lineup on Saturday. Notre Dame versus Ohio State. There's tons of NFL players in this game. Tons of them. But the one I think you should focus on from a Bills perspective is Notre Dame defensive end Isaiah Foskey. And look, maybe you don't think defensive end's a big need, but AJ Epinesa will be in a contract year next season. And Shaq Lawson's only a 1-year deal. The Bills like to invest in this position group. And I can see a world where late in the first round, Isaiah Foskey's there, and it's just the best player available pick that you can't afford to pass up on. So Foskey comes in at number 22 on my preseason big board. He wears number 7 for the Irish, had 11 sacks last year. He gets 9 more sacks this year. He breaks Justin Tuck's all-time record for sacks at Notre Dame. I love the skill set. He's a balanced defender against the run and pass, really good athlete, good flexibility, good rush variety, knows how to defend the run, knows how to build the pass rush plan and develop counters. He's versatile. You'll see him play on the edge. You'll see him move back to a stack linebacker role and play in space. I mean, they do a lot with him. He's a good football player, high character guy. Had a chance to interact with him recently. He was on the Draft Dudes podcast, which is another daily podcast that I do, but that covers like all of football, not just the Bills. And you really just got a good sense for him as a person and the type of personality that I think the Bills would love to add to the mix. And so maybe not the most pressing need, but I think there's a world where he could be the BPA. There's a world where I think the Bills will love him as a player. And I think he offers a lot to an NFL defense, and I'm looking for a big year from Isaiah Foskey. All right, folks, so there you have it. We did a lot this week. We did a lot today on the podcast. I hope you have enjoyed it. Hope you have a great Labor Day weekend. I hope you watch lots of football. There's good football on Friday night, Saturday, games on Sunday night, Monday. It's just heaven for me. If you like football, you're going to be in heaven as well. So enjoy it all. Come back again on Monday. The Bills play next Thursday. So we're going to have a lot of conversation about that Rams game starting next week. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. We'd love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to catching up with you again on Monday.